For nearly 2 decades, the city of Wichita, Kansas, was haunted by a shadow, a boogeyman known only by three terrifying letters, BTK. This wasn't just a random moniker, it was a chilling signature left by the killer himself, a promise of the horror he inflicted upon his victims. It stood for bind, torture, kill. From 1974 to 1991, this phantom stalked the streets, a seemingly ordinary man leading a double life, committing unspeakable acts while hiding in plain sight. He taunted the police, sent letters to the media, and reveled in the citywide fear he created. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. The case went cold, the letters stopped, and for years, Wichita held its breath, wondering if the monster was gone for good. But the silence was just an illusion. This is the story of how one of America's most infamous serial killers, Dennis Rader, was finally unmasked by the one thing he couldn't control, his own ego. The terror began on a cold January morning in 1974. Inside a modest home, police discovered the brutally murdered bodies of four members of the Otero family, Joseph, Julie, and two of their young children, Josephine and Joseph Jr. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. The city was in shock. Who could commit such a heinous act? The answer came a few months later, hidden inside an engineering book at the Wichita Public Library. A letter was found, a detailed, clinical account of the Otero murders, signed by someone who called themselves the BTK Strangler. This was the killer's first move in a long and twisted game he would play with law enforcement and the media. Over the next several years, the BTK Killer would strike again and again, choosing his victims seemingly at random, breaking into their homes, and living out his dark fantasies. He left behind a trail of terror, but very few clues. His attacks were meticulously planned, and he was a ghost in the system, leaving investigators with a puzzle they couldn't solve. What made the BTK case so perplexing was the killer's dual nature. He wasn't a drifter or a recluse hiding on the fringes of society. He was, by all outward appearances, a pillar of his community. Dennis Rader was a family man, a husband and father of two. He was a Boy Scout leader, an active member of his church council, and a compliance officer for Park City, a suburb of Wichita. He was the guy who would write you a ticket for an overgrown lawn, the neighbor who waved hello. Nobody suspected that this seemingly mundane, rule-following bureaucrat was the monster plaguing their city. This perfect camouflage allowed him to operate without suspicion for decades. He kept detailed journals, took disturbing photographs of his crimes, and collected souvenirs, all while living a completely normal life. This terrifying duality is what made him one of the most chilling figures in modern criminal history. He was hiding in plain sight, a predator disguised as the everyday man. After his last known murder in 1991, Dennis Rader went dormant. The BTK case grew cold, relegated to the annals of unsolved mysteries. The detectives who had chased him retired, and a new generation took their place. For 13 long years, there was silence. It seemed the killer had finally stopped, perhaps died, or been imprisoned for another crime. The city of Wichita began to heal, though the scars remained. But in 2004, the ghost decided to return. A letter arrived at a local newspaper containing a copy of a victim's driver's license and photos from a 1986 crime scene that had never been made public. The signature was unmistakable. BTK was back. Why now? It was pure ego. Rader had seen a newspaper article speculating that he was either dead or in prison, and his pride couldn't take it. He needed to prove he was still out there, still in control. This decision to resurface, born from a desperate need for recognition, would ultimately be the first nail in his coffin. Rader's return ignited a new wave of fear, but it also gave investigators a fresh chance. The game was on again, but this time, the rules had changed. Technology had advanced in ways Rader couldn't have imagined. He began sending more packages, more taunting messages, reveling in the renewed media attention. He sent puzzles, drawings, and even a doll bound in the same way he bound his victims. He was playing his old game, but the world was different. He was an analog killer in a digital age. The police, led by Lieutenant Ken Landwehr, decided to play along. They treated Rader's communications with respect in the media, feeding his ego, all while a team of experts analyzed every single item he sent. They were building a profile, looking for any mistake, any tiny slip-up that would lead them to him. The key, they suspected, lay in Rader's own arrogance. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, and the police were about to use that belief against him. The critical moment, the mistake that would end his reign of terror, came in the form of a simple question. In one of his communications, Rader asked the police a pivotal question: could he communicate with them via a floppy disk without being traced? It was a stunning display of technological naivety. In a calculated move, the police responded through a classified ad in the newspaper, as he had requested, assuring him it would be safe. It was a lie. Rader took the bait. On February 16, 2005, a local news station received a padded envelope. Inside was a purple, 1.44 megabyte Memorex floppy disk. For Rader, this was just another move in his game. For the police, it was checkmate. The moment they had the disk, they knew they had him. The digital breadcrumbs he thought he had erased were still there. The trap had been sprung, and the ghost who had haunted Wichita for 30 years was about to be given a name. Forensic specialists immediately went to work on the floppy disk. They didn't need to crack a complex code or uncover a hidden file. They just needed to look at the metadata, the digital fingerprint left on every document. Buried within a deleted Word document on the disk, they found two crucial words: Christ Lutheran Church. The document had last been modified by a user named Dennis. The puzzle pieces snapped into place with breathtaking speed. Investigators cross-referenced the church with anyone named Dennis. They quickly discovered that the president of the church council was a man named Dennis Rader. It was a perfect match. The compliance officer, the family man, the church leader, it was him. The man who had terrorized the city for 3 decades, the man who called himself BTK, was Dennis Rader. The feeling in the police department was electric. After 30 years of dead ends and cold trails, they finally had a name. The ghost was about to become flesh and blood. With their suspect identified, the final step was to get a DNA confirmation. Investigators obtained a warrant to test a pap smear from Rader's daughter, which had been stored at a medical clinic. They compared the DNA from that sample to the DNA found under the fingernails of one of BTK's victims from 1974. The results came back. It was a familial match. The science was undeniable. On February 25, 2005, just 9 days after he sent the floppy disk, Dennis Rader was driving home from work when he saw a swarm of police cars lining his street. He was pulled over, and as Lieutenant Ken Landwehr approached his vehicle, the long, terrifying reign of the BTK Killer came to a quiet, almost mundane end. Rader was arrested without a struggle. The boogeyman was just a man in a car, on his way home for lunch. The news spread like wildfire, and a city that had lived in fear for a generation finally breathed a collective sigh of relief. In the interrogation room, Dennis Rader didn't just confess, he reveled in it. Over the course of more than 30 hours, he calmly and methodically detailed every single one of his crimes, providing horrific details that only the killer could know. He spoke without remorse, describing the murders with a chilling detachment, as if he were discussing a project he had completed. He seemed proud of his work, finally able to brag about the accomplishments he had kept secret for so long. He confirmed that he was, in fact, BTK, and his detailed confession closed 10 murder cases that had haunted the Wichita Police Department for decades. In court, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences, one for each life he had taken. He was sent to a maximum security prison, where he will spend the rest of his days in isolation, the ultimate irony for a man who craved the spotlight. The story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer, serves as a chilling reminder that evil can wear the most ordinary of masks. He was a monster who lived a double life, hidden by the very fabric of the community he terrorized. But his story is also a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice. For 30 years, investigators never gave up. They kept the files open, they followed every lead, and they waited. In the end, it wasn't a brilliant piece of detective work or a lucky break that caught him. It was his own arrogance, his insatiable need for fame, that led to his downfall. He outsmarted himself, falling victim to the very ego that drove him to kill in the first place. The ghost was finally captured, not by force, but by a simple lie and a floppy disk, proving that even the most patient predators can make a fatal mistake. Thank you so much for watching. The story of the BTK Killer is a dark chapter, but one that highlights the incredible persistence of law enforcement. If you found this documentary insightful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating cases. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.